Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 110th Annual Trustee Forum and Swap Meet. My name is Michael Garabedian, and I'm your temporary host today, in place of Alex Trebek and our President, Bill McCoy, who should be here shortly, or within the next hour. So today, we're going to be calling this part of the meeting to order.
Yes.
All right, if anybody has objections, speak now, forever hold your peace. And move on from there. All right, so
You just have to say, Kelly, start the budget hearing.
Kelly, start that budget hearing.
Okay, so we have it up on the screen. This is dark enough for everyone. We can see, otherwise I can close. I can put us in like total darkness and close the shades. Everybody feels good about this?
Don't we like it?
Perfect. Good. Okay, so the budget hearing, what everybody should have in the audience is a copy of the budget mailer that went out in the newsletter, which breaks down our budget. How do I make this go to that? There we go. So the 2024 proposed budget, the total income for the budget is about 3.5 million. Of that, money raised by tax levies is about 3.2 million. The rest of the money comes from state aid and pilots. Of that $13,000, about 1,000 of it is state aid, 1,500. We really do not receive a ton of state aid towards the library budget. Most libraries in New York State don't, especially libraries on Long Island. The library generated income is money that we pull from reserves. It is donations. It is fines and fees. Yes, we are a fine-free library, but if you check out an item from a library that does charge fines, we can't check anything out to you until those fines get cleared up and we actually collect those fines. So we're not passing, like $3 and $4 back across the county. So there is a little bit of fine income, even though we don't charge fines, and then fees for things. In terms of disbursements, salaries, it's about $1.2 million of our budget goes to salaries. About $730,000 goes to benefits and payroll taxes. $260,000 goes to library materials and programs. So that's all the stuff that we do. $241,700 goes to buildings and grounds. Buildings and grounds covers buildings and grounds, but also furnitures, fixtures, electronics, which would be computers, our server, all of those things. And then the disbursement for the debt service or the renovation and expansion, which is exactly $905,000. So as you can see, the amount of money we bring in is the exact amount of money that we plan to disperse in the year. We are proposing a tax levy increase this year of about $140,303. And this increase falls under the tax cap. If your home was assessed at $1 million, your library taxes would increase by approximately $1.70 a month, which is just over $20. It's like $20.35. I think it works out to be, if I multiplied by 12 quickly. So why the increase? The proposed budget shows a change in 4 major categories. The first being library materials. We're looking at a 10.7% increase, which is about $17,000. Those are increases to books because yes, we still do buy hardcover books. Digital downloads. We have several digital collections, which we subscribe to, Canopy. Hoopla, which is ebooks, e-audiobooks, comics, children's materials, television shows, music. It actually has a really excellent music catalog. So if you are a Swiftie, when she drops her next Taylor's Version album, it is immediately available in Hoopla and concurrent checkouts are allowed. So we could all be having a nice Taylor Swift listening party all together. So there's that, and then also the shared Suffolk County digital collection, which is ebooks and audiobooks, and that's used to be through Overdrive. They have discontinued Overdrive, and you would listen to that or read through the Libby app. Fun fact, the John Germain Memorial Library is the biggest user of ebooks and e-audio digital content on the East End in Suffolk County. And we actually use more digital content than more than half of the libraries in Suffolk County. So John Germain has a tremendous number of digital content users. Library programming, we're looking at a 9.4% increase, or just shy of $5,000. That's our programming for all ages and stages and interests. If you were here this summer, we did so much programming. I don't know if we'll ever recover. Those are when we bring in speakers for talks. We've done concerts, crafting programs for kids and adults. Parenting programs that we do try to bring in every once in a while. Those come at a cost, and that money goes to pay for that. Again, buildings and grounds, you're looking at maintenance, insurance, utilities, furniture and equipment. So most of that increase is related to utilities and insurance. Payroll and benefits, you're looking at an 18.5% increase, certainly the largest part of our increase at about $258,000. Those are salaries. We currently employ 22 individuals. Over 70% of our staff currently qualifies for and takes benefits in the years during COVID. And then also last year, we were not fully staffed. And so we have a new person this year, a children's librarian, which was added to meet needs. Which was not budgeted for in 2023. So you see a full-time person in there. And then you also see benefits, which go up 15% like clockwork every year. And then also we have more professional staff now than we have ever had before. And professional staff being someone with a master's in library science or similar degree. So you can have a master's of library science or a master's of information in library science. And we do currently have 2 individuals who are what is considered a library trainee, and they are people who are currently enrolled in library school, one of whom is going to complete library school at the end of this year. So what does the library do for the community? We provide research assistance, public computers, printers, scanners, the equipment so that you can digitize old slides, newspaper clippings, things of that nature. We have circulating museum passes. We have our very popular Library of Things. We circulate Wi-Fi devices or hotspots. So if you are traveling and you don't want to, buck up for the better internet at the Hilton or wherever you're staying, you can actually check out one of our hotspots, which is great. Or if you're going camping, you can take your hotspot with you. We do programs, films, concerts for children's, teens, families, and seniors. Again, our downloadable materials, which are books, audiobooks, newspapers, films, and magazines through something called Flipster. Classes in the use of computers and other new technologies. We've done some great classes on AI this year. 3D printing, and then also providing this and maintaining this beautiful space, this building where people can come and write the next great American novel, to think, to dream. So we feel very strongly that one of the most wonderful things that we do here at the library is provide a third space. Come on, buddy. And that's really it. Does anybody have any questions?
I have something that
Sure.
I'd just like you to bring up. First of all, with regard to the fact that we are under the tax cap,
Yes.
how many association libraries or other similarly situated institutions in the state are coming in under the tax cap?
That's certainly something that sort of relates to where you are in the state, and whether or not you live in a community that would support an increase in the piercing or exceeding that cap or not. Statewide, I don't have those statistics. Most of the other parts of New York State are very conservative. Most of them also have extra hoops they need to jump through to get their library budget votes on the school ballot that we don't. And so a lot of them don't even increase their budgets from year to year. They don't always have a budget. In terms of locally, you had I mean, there's 56 libraries in Suffolk County. I would say that there's probably anywhere between 8 and 12 every year that exceed the cap. They are mostly association libraries, and I would say that they are mostly association libraries because association libraries generally have smaller budgets. And when the tax cap is set, we'll say it's 2%. The tax cap is never 2%. Our tax cap this year was actually a little bit over 6%. 6% of $1 million budget is a very different number than 6% of a $10 million budget, right? So for those libraries with those tiny budgets, they kind of have no choice but to exceed that cap from year to year.
And I also noticed that in the allocation of increases that you had in the budget with regard to the employee benefits and salaries and things of that nature, that more or less was significantly more percentage wise than the other increases. And I just thought it might be worthwhile just to explain the reason why our benefits are higher or increased. And
sure. So one of the things that we struggle with, and the other East End libraries, especially on the South Fork, struggle with, is employee retention. And a couple of reasons we struggle with that is, of course, that terrible commute. But I do it by boat, but it's a tough commute from Up Island. And the other part of it is we are in competition with libraries from Up Island, which are civil service public libraries. A civil service public library provides NYSHIP health insurance. They also provide New York State retirement. And so in hopes of what was happening here for many years, certainly before the pandemic and during the pandemic, and when I got on board, is that we were having staff commit to making the commute out here. And then as soon as they had library experience, or they were reachable on the civil service list, they would jump to a civil service library. And so something that the board here has been working really hard on is creating a benefits package which competes with those civil service benefits. So we also provide NYSHIP health insurance. As an association library, we are allowed to do that. We were paying 90% of health insurance. We bumped that up to cover 100% of health insurance because that's something really hard to walk away from, especially if you have a family. And then the other part of that is we increased our retirement benefit up to, if the individual puts in 2%, the library will match 10%. And while that won't compete with, my parents' New York State retirement, or even my husband's New York State retirement, it definitely competes with the current Tier 6 New York State retirement. So the goal is to really bring people out here and give them a reason to make this commute and to stay here, because this is a great place to work. It's a great community. Not one person who has left here has left because they did not love the library or they did not love the community. They just hated the commute. And the benefits were better. So that's something that we've worked on. I think we're just shy of like workforce housing. And then that's everything we can do. Yes.
But to add on to what Kelly was saying, we made a very concerted effort over the last several years. We have a beautiful building, great staff. We want this to be a place that people really want to come to. And they know that they're going to be treated well. They're going to be treated fairly. We want to be on the cutting edge of all of these benefits policies and really have a very forward-looking policy with regard to our staff. So that if we have to pay more, fine. I think we're all, instead of setting a limit, someone is always saying, why don't we do the next level or the next level after that? It's never penny pinching or trying to cut costs and things of that nature. And it's not like we're trying to give benefits or money away. Everyone works hard. They're having certain benefits. But as Kelly pointed out, we do have a problem in attracting talent, just from a logistics standpoint, but also retaining talent. We want people who are here to stay here and never leave.
Yes. So that's it. Does anybody have any other questions? So then I just have one more important slide for everybody to look at. And that is a reminder that the budget vote and trustee election is Thursday, September 28th. That is next Thursday, and it is from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. here in the lower level Friends Community Meeting Room. And if you are not going to be here, but you want to vote by absentee ballot, I encourage you to reach out to the Sag Harbor District Clerk, and she can take care of that for you. Okay, that's it. That was easy.
There you go.
All right, so let me just close this up. Bounce. They're so cute. He doesn't have any teeth anymore. My child, not my husband still has his teeth. My child does not. So what I would like to do is I'm gonna pull this up. And we're going to invite our 3 candidates who are in the audience. We have Robert Ferrari, Megan Curran-Schmidt, and Lisa Crisicano to come sit up here. And then we're going to grill you.
This is a fun part.
And I'm going to pull the I have the questions on my phone, so I promise I'm not playing Candy Crush. It's where my notes, you know, I have so many screens. All right. So
2 parts. There's an oral part and a written.
so
Is it in Spanish? Because I
It is. No pressure, but if it, so what I handed out to all of you, what is also available on our website, each candidate submitted a biography. I do encourage you to read them. And then there is going to be an article in both the Sag Harbor Express and the East Hampton Star next week. Both papers told me they could not make it here, but that they would in fact write an article. I guess it would be the paper tomorrow.
Would you give us the stuff, the handouts too?
No. No, that's my answer. We can certainly,
And let me know we didn't get any snacks
you didn't get any snacks.
or swag.
I have swag for later. Don't worry, I have swag.
Thursday's too late.
It's gonna be Thursday of this week. I said next week, but I keep thinking today is Tuesday. So it is Thursday tomorrow. Yes. So I think the first thing we'll do is we'll have each of you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your relationship with the library and what you think is great about it. So we'll start with Robert.
Okay. My name is Bob Ferrari. Been a resident in Sag Harbor since 2000. Sorry. I've been a resident since, it sounds like my wife. I've been a resident since 2005, and oddly, I had never. I went to the John Germain Library a few times when it was under construction and it had the small space down at the shopping mall, mainly to write. It was actually reading some of John Avalon's posts about the place here that got me in here, and he talked about him writing his book on Lincoln here, and sort of mimicked him and sort of started to use the all right, you still having trouble hearing me?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's safe for hours. I'm not hearing.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. We both have.
So it was John Avalon's post on Instagram that I started to come here and do some writing on the rotunda floor. I got a library card. I read a lot. I post all my everything that I read on my Instagram. I use mainly the live library to search and find books. I have about 95 books on my wish list. I have about 200 books on my Hamilton book wish list, and I have about 250 on my thrift books list. So I've got a fair amount, a fair amount to get through, and so I do use that. I have come here for various talks as well. Some of the other things that I use is the little nook with the periodicals. I tend to sit there and take a look through the periodicals. I also take a look at the free books that are outside. I call it book rescuing. I don't know what happens to the books, but I don't even like to think about it. So as a matter of fact, walking in here, I took a book on Diane Cooper and Evelyn Waug's letter writing. So it's safe. It won't reach its demise. So that's pretty much it as far as the my relationship to it is concerned.
Megan, thanks.
Hi, my name is Megan Kern-Schmidt. I've been a resident of the East End full-time since 2002 when we originally lived out in Montauk. When my daughter was born in 2007, Montauk felt like West London to me. So I would come up with day trips that I could bring my child on, and John Germain Library was one of those. It was in this building before the renovation when things were cold and damp. But we love the library, and so that's really the basis of my relationship with John Germain was through my daughter, who is now in 11th grade. So we've I feel like she's been brought up here at the library. We've been crafting with Wanda since the early days. And it's just the library has given us a lot in terms of programming, relationships. I care about the people that work in this building. And so that's really my relationship to the library. I'm constantly requesting books. We're frequent flyers in here all the time. So I'm just grateful for the library and everything it's provided and continues to provide.
I'm going to try to go without the microphone. My name is Lisa Frizicano. I've lived here since 1997 with my family. My daughter at 11 months old actually took her first steps in the library. So as a family, we participated in programs like origami and baking, holiday cards. In 6th grade, when the math got a little crazy, we took advantage of the free math tutoring. It wasn't a fan favorite, but it was effective. We also borrowed books because our routine was to have bedtime, reading together at bedtime. Kathy Creedon, when the library was across from the post office, encouraged me to do a backyard chicken program. And I came in with my 4 hens and talked about what it's like to raise backyard chickens. And that was years ago. We started that 17 years ago. And in raising 30 to 35 chickens, we're down to 1. So if you want me to do a chicken program, you need to ask me soon because we only have 1 girl left. Currently, I participate in the adult programs. I love the Spice Club, one of my favorite things here. I've donated and taken seeds for my garden from the seed library. And I'm always borrowing books. I always have something on reserve, on hold, or on my bedside table. And I love this place. I love the staff of this place. And the place itself and the people have been a big part of our lives since we moved here.
Great. Since you're down at that end and the mic's down at that end, we'll continue with you, Lisa.
Sure.
What do you feel is the role of library trustee?
When I was thinking about this, I looked on the website and kind of, reviewed the library guidelines. And I think the role of the trustee is to support the mission statement of the library, which is to, have programming, to encourage, lifelong learning, to recognize the history of the library and to also, encourage, the future of a healthy library.
I'm just putting the shades down because I just realized looking at the screen, nobody can see you all, you're backlit. So, I apologize. Okay. Megan, same question.
Yeah, just to add to what Lisa said, as a trustee, you're really a steward of the institution, the people who work here and the community that it serves. I think as a trustee, you're always looking for the next kind of connections that you can make in your community with your library, and just making sure those connections are happening. Of course, there's the fiscal responsibility and supporting the staff here, and just lending your ideas and your heart and your passion and just being a steward of the library and making sure people know it and that they use it. I think there's a lot of, usage, you just want to encourage people to be using the library, and getting those stats and those experiences happening. So,
Sure.
I'm sorry.
I guess I'll hold on to this. So, as far as the trustees are concerned, I mean, in the certainly in a public company, the Board of Trustees, narrowly defined, is there to basically represent the stakeholders. Narrowly defined, that means the shareholders. More broadly defined, that could include the workers, the communities, the customers who do business with them. So I think more broadly, that's how I view the Board of Trustees as being representatives of all those different groups and trying to figure that out. And it's more of a strategic mindset rather than a day-to-day tactical execution mindset. It's the vision as opposed to what are we doing this morning. So I think that part of it is important. And the other thing that I have to say as far as that's concerned, it may be a little bit off the track, but I think all of these towns have a different vibe. They have a different way of being. And you have I'm gonna say this. East Hampton is Rodeo Drive shopping mall. Here seems to be a better balance between Germain Library, the church, the Sag Harbor movie theater, and most of the Bay Theater, and most of them are within the town. So there's a certain synergy that really could be leveraged and taken advantage of. And just from reading some of the reports, it looks like it already is. And that character moving forward will probably only blossom and be able to make this a separate place. One more quick thought on this is I continually hear from owners of the businesses out here about the 12 weeks. Okay, if I don't make money in the 12 weeks of summer, I'm dead. So really it's the other 9 months that are important. I knew someone who was a restaurateur, bar owner in Manhattan, and he would tell me that if I can't make money on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, I shouldn't be in business. He says it's Monday and it's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday that I need to break even to stay in business. So all of these assets that are here are actually a year-round draw. And it has knock-on effects for all those businesses in town. And one last thing. I had a boss who I worked on Wall Street. Bonus day was a big time. Some days it was a real disappointing time. But this particular boss really didn't care what happened on bonus day. Cared about the next morning. And the next morning, he would bring us in a room and tell us, you know, today starts next year. I need to know, and I need to build a case starting today as to why you're going to get paid next year. And all during the year, he'd be constantly, you know, hitting us. Tell me a story, give me a story, tell me a story. And he said, I want to walk in that meeting and I don't want to have to ask them for money. I want them to tell me they want to give me more money, and how can they do that to get more done. It's a good way of looking at things, and yeah, you know, and that way of thinking is sort of infectious in the world. And I think the layout of this town gives us a unique opportunity to do something like that. So I'll cut myself off.
Okay, so we'll
Like that's either.
there you go. We'll switch it up a little bit. Megan, if you could change one thing about the library, what would it be?
Well, it's not really changing things, it's more adding to it. One of the, I mean, beyond all the services and the incredible library of objects and all these great programs that you guys run, is I really like when the library puts together a program that connects to communities that may not intersect as naturally, like the program where you put teenagers in contact with older people who are learning their technology and they're really helping one another. And so that kind of connection making is what I think this library could do even more of than it already does. An example being a few years ago, they held you guys had a babysitting class at the library. I think it was a 2-day program, which I would love to see back. It was a very sweet program. But then taking that one step further, and maybe like the graduates of that program could be invited to like a baby and me Saturday, you know, session. And maybe those teens would find a family and that they connected with, and maybe they would have a summer job after that, or, you know, sort of bringing those kids, because parents of 2-year-olds, unless they know a child from a friend, they're not coming in contact with 16-year-olds, you know, on a regular basis in a meaningful way. So something like that. I would just like to see the dots of the programming connect, like take the next step and make another connection more. And I think there are programs, like I said, with the technology and things that you guys already do, which are great, but I think there's always more connections that can happen. Like, you know, I'm sure you guys have already talked about the John Steinbeck House and what a relationship with them might look like, but just constantly looking for the connections to enrich the community building in Sag Harbor.
Okay. Lisa, same question.
Yeah, I actually wrote some notes, just based on the questions, that you had sent us, Kelly, and that was, similar in that I'd love to see, more intergenerational programming. One thing that I am interested in just in life is, healthy aging and wellness in aging. And I think that the library could really be a great proponent of that in the community, connecting just different generations of kids through maybe cooking programs or gardening programs, even exercise programs. You know, I was thinking if there is a connection with the park in maybe having some kind of like a pickleball thing that's sponsored by the library, or I just see that having that connection between different age groups encourages wellness and connection in our elderly population, and a sense of belonging and a real sense of value and worth.
Bob, same question.
Oh, okay, so I'm gonna take the elderly question here. So I'm 64 years old. Next year, I'll be 65. By December 31st of 2024, there are gonna be more people 65 years old in this country than there ever have been. So the total addressable market is leaning in that direction. And one of the things that I sort of looked at, and you know, the health wellness, next week there's a session on Medicare, which I'm going to actually go for. I don't know, it's like confusing as hell to me. But it's supposed to be simple, check the box, right? I don't know, but the flip side to that, I don't know if you're familiar with this term, but counterclockwise. So studies that are done where they take older people and they immerse them in what it looked like when they were like 16 years old, and then they measure their health benefits afterwards, and you know, their blood pressure is down, their cognition's up, everything goes better. Because things like going to Medicare session, it's important, but it's anxiety. Okay, so if there was something that particularly drew them in, then it's me. I think it would be a different resolution. You look at things like this, you know, the Beatles have a Get Back thing on, on Netflix. Every one of my friends watched that. They're calling me. They're talking about they're having the same conversations with me that they had with me in 1971. And it's like, we've already discussed this 100 times, but that's the draw. That's what, so they're coming in anticipating something pleasant. They're leaving in a better pleasant state. Hopefully somewhere along the line, they'll write a check and say, thank you. So that's my thinking on that.
So, we are a library, so we always like to ask, do you have a favorite book or a favorite genre, and what format do you like to read it in? We'll start with you, Bob.
Okay. I don't read electronically, at least not the books. Generally speaking, I'll take a hardcover over a paperback. I got a Kindle, the second edition. I never really used it. The books that I own, if I don't mark up your book, but if I purchase a book and I know what the book is about, and I know I'm going to mark it up, and you know, I write in the books, I highlight the books. So I always use a hard copy. As a matter of fact, I took out from here The Bomber Mafia by Malcolm Gladwell.
It's a good book.
And I read it and I said, and I was like, I actually went out and bought it, and I'm going to have to read it again, and I'm going to have to mark it out. So as far as particular books, I tend to read a lot of books that are letters or diary entries. On my nightstand, 4 books that have been there for a very, very long time are Virginia Woolf's Volume 1 of her diaries, 1915 to 1919. There's one of the Catcher in the Rye, I Love Big City, and I forgot that. I can't think of the last one right now, but all of them are marked up, and oddly, for several of them, movies have been made, like Bright Lights, Big City. I won't go see the movie because the book meant too much for me. Even I love Virginia Woolf, I bought the book Hours. I never read it because I didn't want to, I'm hearing her first time from the diaries. Why should I hear somebody else's in interpretation of it? And I've never seen the movie. I've been tempted to read it and tempted to do it. And even Bright Lights Big City, I read it in a day at the beach when I wasn't going through a very good time. I hated my job. I was getting divorced from my first wife. My mother was still alive, but she was dying. All these themes in that book were exactly the same that I was going through. Plus, it's written in the second person, so the narrator was saying you, and I couldn't sidestep it. I felt like they were talking about me. So it's
Your next book's gonna be American Prometheus. Hours long.
I own American Prometheus. I never read it, along with the other. There were two books that were written about Oppenheimer at the same time. I bought both of them. I never got around to reading them, so maybe I'll do that at this point.
Megan, genre and format, favorite book.
Format. I tend to lean heavily towards historical fiction. I'm in the middle of Edward Rutherford's New York for the second time. And I also belong to a book club with about a dozen other local women. So they push the boundaries of what I'm reading. And we've read, just this past summer, we read everything from Migrations, which is an older story, and Lessons in Chemistry, which I probably never would have read, but that was really fun. And the other one recently was I Have Some Questions for You, which was kind of a dark tale. But I also read a lot about food. I'm a local food person, so I love reading like Michael Pollan, but I also, if you can call it reading, read cookbooks from cover to cover. It's probably what I check out the most here. And Susan's always like, when you get this back, like I'm gonna, check it out next.
Did you read the Stanley Tucci book?
No, I didn't read
You have
Stanley
to.
Tucci
You
yet,
have
but
to.
yeah,
Really good.
I will. He's on my list. He's such an awesome character. So yeah, so I range the gamut, but I love historical fiction. I love when there's like a murder in there or something, or like, Devil in a White City, any of these stories that have real characters in them, but have sort of made them more interesting and fun to read. So I tend to fall asleep when I read, so I really have to be engaged with the book. Migrations was tough for me for that reason. I loved it, but I was just nodding off the whole time. So yeah, it has to have some excitement. Or a cookbook.
Doesn't that keep you awake though?
No,
Yeah.
it keeps me up in like another 20 minutes. And then I fall asleep.
Lisa.
So I think I'm on all levels of the library here. I enjoy the travel guides, especially Rick Steves. I use them all the time when planning a trip. I prefer books, a book in hand rather than an ebook. I take recommendations from Donna in the teen section because I love a dystopic future book, and I like historical fiction. Philippa Gregory is one of my favorite authors. I would say the most favorite book that I've read recently is Demon Copperhead, and because I love a story where there's a character. I like books where I enjoy the character, where I feel a connection with a main character, and I love to see somebody overcome. So that I would say that's my favorite book most recently.
Okay. I'm going to ask one more question, but it's going to be a two-part question, and then we'll open it up to the floor. But why have you decided to run for the board, and what will you bring to the library if elected? Yeah, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I think in
No, it's not.
going over the first question of my relationship with the library, when I thought about doing, running for the board, I thought about the length and breadth of my relationship. I mentioned that my daughter took her first steps at 11 months old in this building. She's going to be 24 in a couple months. So this place just, I feel like it means a lot to me, and it's been a big part of my family's life. I feel that community service is important. I've volunteered in the Sag Harbor Youth Soccer League for many years, and I also currently volunteer at my church, the St. Andrew Church. So in just thinking about what I wanted to do, this felt, like when I look at the things I want to do, this felt like something that I would be interested in. And what was the next part? The second part?
What do you think you're going to bring to the table as a trustee?
What, as a trustee?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think along that same theme that we discussed earlier about wellness, I am a doctor of chiropractic. I'm retired. I work part-time at the Sag Harbor Florist. But I'm always interested in wellness. And I think most recently I'm interested in the blue zones. I don't know if anybody has read any of that. And I just see a real way that the library can affect that. I met someone who I've known for a long time but hadn't seen at a farm. I had to pick up something at a farm. And she was has someone who's lived here her whole life and has been in the past, been a vibrant member of the community. And when I was talking to her, she was telling me how she doesn't like the community anymore. The only place she goes is the post office and the grocery store out of necessity. And I felt like, and this is, someone who's lived here her whole life. And I felt that was sad. She was describing her reclusive life. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I would love to be someone who, through the trustee position, kind of encourages us, we all feel that kind of crush during the summertime where we maybe don't feel as connected. And I think there's a lot of things that we can continue to do to really enjoy our lives 12 months of the year here.
Megan, same question.
So I don't know if you've read my bio, this is in there. The entirety of my career on the East End has been in nonprofits, both professionally. I was the director of communications for the CDCH Foundation for Special Children, who built the CDCH preschool and charter school in Wainscott. So that was a very big undertaking. I worked with fundraising boards there. I was also the communications director of Quinnipiac Camp and Retreat Center on Shelter Island. More boards, great boards and great staff. And I think working for a nonprofit and being on a board of a nonprofit, it's interesting to see both sides of that coin. In terms of like volunteerism, my passions have really been about my kid and about local food. So the first board I sat on was for Slow Food East End. And I sat on that board for the 6 years, which is the max term. I was the board vice chair for my final 2 years. And I co-chaired two of our most our biggest committees, which were our events committee and our education committee, which was very, very time consuming and very, very worth it. We fundraised for farmers to go into schools to teach about food and growing food. We paid chefs to go into schools to do cooking demonstrations. We held workshops of all types, dinners of all types, and we it was a very active working board. And I feel that having board experience and also having such a nonprofit experience, I really feel like I know what's happening with nonprofits out here. And I really want to spend the time that I have. I have, you know, a teenager and a husband and 2 dogs. And I want it to be for an organization that means a lot to me. Slow Food was that, and the library is certainly that. So
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Bob, what,
This is,
same question,
this is a terrible question.
is it?
No.
So, what do you think you'll, if, you know?
Well, first of all, how I got here. Right?
Mhm. Yes,
Okay, am I allowed to say?
you can
that?
say that,
Okay,
sure.
all right, say, okay, so I came in July to a talk by Josh Sapin, the former CEO of AMC, who wrote a book called The Third Act. Oddly, about 3 weeks before, I had left my my Wall Street job, not voluntarily. So I was sort of in a position where I really didn't know what my next step was, and it was not a comfortable situation at any point in your life. I mean, the corridor can be well lit, it can be hazy, it can be poorly lit. All of a sudden, everything went dark. So I really didn't know what I was going to do next. There were some things that I wanted to pay attention to, and that I wanted to do that I didn't have time to concentrate on. One of them was my writing. But what Sapin said that night really resonated with me. And in my own head, I kept on whispering to myself, you know, keep your mind open to every possibility. Figure this thing out. So part of what I did was, you know, I looked up Sapin's publisher. He published 3 books, 3 different places. One of them looked okay. I sent my novel to them. I just got a rejection on Sunday. But and I said to and I thought about this place, and oddly, you were talking about it in employment here. I was a very good mentor for a while at work. For several years. I was in charge of training the first and second year analysts. I still have people. I have one guy call me from Shanghai, where he's stationed now. I haven't seen the guy in 20 years, and but they still come back to me to talk to me and ask me for advice. So I said, you know, if I put myself in a position to leverage that, maybe that would be a good thing. And I said to myself, maybe working at the library would be one of those things. So I sent Kelly an email, and I said, are there any jobs? Can I do anything for you? She sent an email back to me that said, I'm fully staffed. So a couple of weeks later, I got that email about the Board of Trustees, and you know, I looked at it. I looked at the bios of everybody on the board there, and I sort of said to myself, this is the way my mind is cranking, right? My mind is cranking. I'm like, well, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an accountant. I don't really have a lot of experience with nonprofits. I said, what could I possibly offer them? And I said, well, if I actually got a job at the library and learned how the engine room worked, then I could get myself on the board. This is how my head is working. About 3 days later, Kelly sends me an email and says, for your third act, you should think about running for the board. And I said, I think we should talk about this. So we had a conversation. Not a very good salesman. I thought my idea was a wonderful idea. It's kind of like an Amazon. Amazon has these the two-way door. Stop talking about an idea. Just put it. You know, if you can get in it and out of it without much cost, just test it out, see if it works. If it doesn't work, toss it away. But I'm not a very good salesman. So at the end of our conversation, I said, I can't run for the board. The next morning I woke up, she was already on vacation, and I said to myself, I said, so how's that being open to every possibility working for you right now? I said, probably not too well. So I said, let me go and then see what I can, what I can do as far as the Board of Trustees. As far as what I bring, it may sound like a negative thing, but I can tell you that, you know, in our meetings, we still have research analysts come down and talk to us. My boss banned me from asking questions in the meeting because he said I was wasting too much time on how to get out of these meetings quickly. And they used to call me the skeptic because I would always quit, you know, they would tell you, you know, the last 7 times this happened, 5 of these things happened. Well, that's fine. What about the last 20 times that it happened? So I think I don't have the experience in the nonprofits. I do have experience in the corporate world, and I do bring a beginner's mind and a degree of skepticism.
Does anyone in the audience have any questions for the candidates? Nada.
Actually,
Get used to this, guys. Get used to this.
and I'll explain why the board knows me. Because it's the question that I have the board meetings are open to the public. And I don't recall, but I have missed the last few ones, but I've been going to the board meetings for probably, so many years, I don't know whether it's 20 years or more. How come any of you have not come? Have you ever thought of it? Are you aware that the board meetings are open? And if you were on the board, what sort of committee would interest you? Because there are a number of different committees to be on.
Yes. Do you want me to list the committees? There's so many. All right. So there are a number of committees. We have a personnel committee. We have the finance, budget, contracts, and legal committee, buildings and grounds, policy and long range planning, outreach and public relations. We have a representative on the MASH Park Board. We also have our ad hoc One for the Books committee, because we're bringing that event back. And then we also have currently an ad hoc scholarship committee. We recently adopted a scholarship policy and application process. That scholarship is currently being funded by a specific donor, but the goal is to expand that out so we can have a pot of money where we give out the scholarship based on the interest. And that scholarship is to encourage people to be on a pathway to success. So it's not necessarily for a high school student graduating, but perhaps somebody who took a gap year or a gap couple of years, or maybe wants to change career paths and does not have the money to do it, whether it be, they want to, they're working in a hospital and they want to go towards their nursing degree or something of that nature, or they're working, at one of the marinas and they want to be certified in mechanics, or they want to be an EMT. So the goal of that is really trade related scholarship for individuals in our community. So those are all the committees. So again, real quick, because I got a little off track: scholarship, One for the Books fundraiser, MASH Park, outreach and public relations, policy and long range planning, buildings and grounds, the big one, finance, budget, contracts and legal, and personnel. So
I'll start. I think the day that I ran in here, it was a Saturday, 2 days before the signatures were due. And I ran in to get a book and then go relax at Long Beach. I wasn't thinking of running for the board. I did speak to a couple of the library staff. And even after picking up the paperwork, I was still not 100% sure that I really had time to do that. But I think what made me want to do it is when I needed to get the signatures, and I started that night, again, still not knowing if I was gonna hand it in on Monday. Was just meeting my neighbors again. Like, I've lived in the same house since 1997. I walked up and down my block, was around supper time, and I caught people going out to dinner. I caught people cooking dinner, eating dinner. And I loved just connecting with these people who I usually just wave to when we pass by in our cars or if we're walking our dog. So the thought of running for the board was not something that I had thought of. So I never really came to a board meeting. I used the library as a patron. And you know, so that's why I never came before, because I never really considered it. And from my perspective, things run great. I mean, I love the library. I love the programs. I love all the books that are available when I want them to be. I could see myself on the committees. I could see myself, Mashashamute Park. I have a long history of being interested in athletics, being involved in athletics. So I could see myself in that direction. I'm also intrigued by the scholarship committee. So.
Megan.
So no, I've never been to a board meeting here, and similar what Lisa said, I am in this building multiple times at each week, so I feel like if I sensed something was wrong or you know, that I would be more inclined to come to a meeting, but because I feel I'm in the building so often and I'm talking with the staff so often, that it really wasn't necessary. Plus it's 6 o'clock, I'm usually cooking dinner. But so there's that. In terms of the committees, certainly as an outreach and public relations committee, that's sort of my background, is in writing specifically. Mash Park, I also have a very close relationship with, and you can find me back in the trails of the Longbelt most of the winter, fall, and spring in the morning. And I love the park. I just love the park. So yeah, the scholarships are interesting. I mean, even buildings and grounds. When I was at CDCH, I had a very intimate relationship with not just the fundraising process for that building, but I was the go-between between the foundation and the board and the general contractors there, and every single change order. And my husband is a builder, so whether I like it or not, I have more knowledge about buildings and grounds than I ever thought I would, frankly. So yeah, those are some of them.
You're coming in at a good time, Megan.
Yeah. I was looking at the renderings. I feel like we just reopened the library and I was like, but you know, then I think back of how little my daughter was when that happened in the big parade that happened outside, and I realized
we're pulling you back.
it's been a minute. So so those were my thoughts on that, but certainly I think seeing everyone and meeting everyone here and reading about you is very eye-opening in a great way. So I think at the public, we should be grateful that we've had such a great board so far.
Good.
Yeah.
And Bob, same question.
Right, well, I obviously came late to the Board of Trustees, so I never did really come to a meeting. I did try and come to the last meeting, but I got here a little bit late. The doors were actually locked outside. I couldn't get in here. In that little scenario that I gave you before about me working here and eventually getting myself on the board, the whisper to myself was, you realize you're gonna have to go to every board meeting to figure out what the hell they do before you actually get on there. I have a ridiculous way about me, and I don't know why, but this is the image that always comes to my brain, and it may be simplistic, but when I was a kid, we used to play stick ball, throwing it to a chalk box. The other guy would have a stick trying to hit the ball. One of my friends, Pat Kenny, still my friend, would always hit low and outside. I would go to the schoolyard by myself, especially on a hot day because I knew no one would be there, and I would throw that ball 100 times, 200 times under where his chin would be,
Oh.
right underneath it, right,
Brush back.
right underneath his chin, and I got really good at doing that. So I know I can grind, I know I can get the skill, and I would throw that ball, and he would get so frustrated. And then every once in a while, I'd throw it low and outside. He would jump on it, and I would literally be bouncing the ball ahead of him. But he was so waiting for that low and outside pitch that. But then the point of the story is that I have every intention to work at it.
And
That's it.
do you have a committee that interests you?
Well, the scholarship, my father at 87 years old is an economics professor because he retired for about 15 minutes about 20 years ago. So I've lived in an academic environment for most of my life. I've heard his turnaround stories and success stories, and one of them being my sister who went to is this thing going to be on tape on the website?
It is.
All right, she's probably going to hear this. But anyway, 7 high schools in 2 years. She doesn't graduate. Her father has a PhD. Not a good thing. At 35, you know, my father brought her to his college, and she basically worked part-time to get her degree. My sister went on to make astronomical amounts of money. But she will tell me to this day that her proudest moment was getting that, was turning it around and getting that diploma. So if I could do that for somebody else, that would be great.
All right, thank you. We are running a little bit over time. Does anybody have any other questions?
I do, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you all for coming. We're gonna take a 3 or 4 minute break. So if anybody needs to stretch their legs or use the restroom, I invite you all to stay for our regular monthly meeting. Those seats are much more comfy than these seats. And so we'll take a quick 3 or 4 minute recess, and then we'll get started again. Thank you.
Thank you.